There is a moment in the year when the world seems to forget how to move. The sun sinks slow, its arc across the sky, shrinking until it feels like a final exhale. The ancient peoples believed that this was the night when the sun itself paused, as if gathering strength for the long ascent ahead. They could feel this stillness in their bodies, in the land, and in the air that hung heavy with frost. The longest night was not just a celestial occurrence. It was an interruption in the rhythm of life, an invitation to step into a threshold where the ordinary rules softened and the deeper truths emerged. As the sun hovered at its lowest point, time felt different. Days no longer marched forward with familiar certainty. There was a sensation of suspension, a quieting of movement, a slowing of breath. Even the earth seemed to hold itself in a subtle tension, as though waiting for a signal from the sky. In this moment, the ancestors understood that they were standing between two worlds. The world that had been shaped through the years' cycles of growth and labor, and the world that was yet to be born. The sun's stillness mirrored the pause within their own spirits, asking them to reflect before stepping into the next turning of the wheel. The darkness of the longest night was not approached as a threat, but as a profound teacher. Ancient communities recognized that in order to understand the light, they had to be willing to sit inside the dark. The winter sky stretched wide and deep above them, a vastness that humbled the human mind. Stars shone with sharper clarity, undistorted by artificial glow. The cold sharpened awareness. Silence revealed the smallest sounds. In this heightened state, the solstice night became a vessel for insight. The longer the sun remained still, the deeper their attention turned inward. The women of these communities were often the first to perceive the subtle shifts of the season. They noticed how animals changed their patterns, how plants curled into their roots, how the air gained a certain weight. They understood that stillness was not stagnation but preparation. Just as life rests in the womb before it emerges, the earth rested in this pause before returning to light. Through their intuition, the tribe learned that the moment when the sun stands still is not a moment of emptiness. It is a moment of potential. The darkness gathers not to consume, but to protect the fragile spark of what is yet to come. For the ancestors, the solstice night was a threshold that demanded presence. They gathered around fires not to chase away the dark, but to honor its purpose. They entered the silence willingly, believing that wisdom waited for those who could sit with stillness. They sensed that the pause in the sky was also a pause within themselves. What had grown heavy during the year could now be acknowledged. What had been avoided could now be seen. What had been lost could now be mourned. The darkness allowed truths to surface, truths that the brighter seasons had pushed aside. When the sun stands still, the outer world mirrors the inner one. The ancestors believed that this night gave them access to layers of consciousness usually hidden beneath the pace of daily life. Thoughts took on new depth. Feelings became clearer. Intuition sharpened. They understood that the longest night did not weaken the world. It clarified it. In this stillness, they recognized the raw shape of their own existence. Stripped of distraction and illuminated only by the soft pulse of firelight, this moment of cosmic pause also reminded them of the fragility and resilience of life. The sun's power seemed at its weakest, yet it had not vanished. It rested, it gathered itself, it prepared to rise again. This cycle reflected a timeless truth. Strength is not constant motion. Strength includes rest, reflection, and surrender. The ancestors looked to the sky and saw in the sun's stillness a lesson for their own spirits. They learned that stepping into the next cycle required acknowledging the ending of the current one. They learned that renewal begins not with force, but with stillness. As the longest night unfolded, each person felt the shift inside themselves. The stillness of the sun became a stillness in their thinking, in their breathing, in their awareness. In this shared pause, the community found unity. They gathered closer to the fire, not out of fear, but out of recognition that they were all participants in the same cosmic turning. The darkness wrapped around them as a sacred cloak, reminding them that life moves through cycles of descent and ascent, contraction and expansion, silence and expression. The solstice night marked the threshold between these states. It was the moment when the world held its breath before beginning again. When ancient people said the sun stood still, they were not describing an astronomical fact alone. They were describing a spiritual experience, a moment when the outer and inner worlds aligned in profound stillness. The sky paused, and so did they. They entered the longest night not to escape life, but to meet it more honestly. And in that moment, they understood something essential. The return of the sun begins in the deepest quiet. Renewal begins in darkness. Awakening begins in stillness. The longest night is not an ending. It is the breath before the rise. To the ancient mind, the longest night was not a blank canvas. It was a world layered with presence. When the sun slipped away and shadows stretched across the land, people felt the atmosphere change. The darkness gained texture, density, intention. It was not simply absence. It was a living realm, a place where forces moved quietly, carrying messages, shaping dreams, and shifting the boundaries between seen and unseen. The ancestors believed that the world beneath the darkness awakened only when the light returned. The night revealed truths sunlight could not touch. In those long solstice hours, the land itself behaved differently. Trees stood like guardians, still and listening. The ground held a deeper cold, as if protecting something hidden beneath its frozen surface. Rivers slowed their flow, creating pockets of silence where water seemed to pause between breaths. Animals moved with caution, sensing that the night belonged to older forces. Even the wind carried a different sound, low and deliberate, brushing against the skin with the weight of memory. Every element of the natural world shifted to match the rhythm of the longest night. The ancestors saw these shifts not as coincidences, but as signs of a world alive with intelligence. They believed that darkness unveiled realms normally concealed by daylight. Spirits of land, sky, and ancestral memory moved freely without the interference of human noise. The night became a bridge, connecting the physical world to the unseen layers that shaped fate, intuition, and spiritual understanding. Entering darkness meant entering relationship with forces that guided, challenged, or enlightened those who dared to feel their presence. Women, especially those attuned to cycles of moon and earth, sensed these presences with profound sensitivity. They understood that darkness heightens certain senses while quieting others. They taught the community that night vision is not limited to the eyes. It is the ability to perceive subtle movements in energy, to recognize the shift in a room, to feel the slight pull of an unseen presence. The world beneath the darkness revealed itself through sensation, intuition, and the quiet language of the body. These teachings became central to how the tribe navigated the long night. To the ancestors, darkness was a revealing force. It stripped away illusions created by light. Without visual distraction, people encountered their emotions, fears, and desires with heightened clarity. The world beneath the darkness existed not only around them, but within them. The night uncovered hidden thoughts, unresolved memories, and forgotten dreams. It was believed that the longest night brought the unconscious to the surface, offering insight that everyday life suppressed. To sit in darkness was to sit with the truth of one's own spirit. Because of this, the solstice night was a time when visions came more readily. Not dramatic hallucinations, but subtle impressions, images rising in mind, symbols forming in thought, sensations leading to understanding. People recognized these experiences as communication from something larger than themselves. Some believed they came from ancestors who walked between worlds during the solstice. Others believed they were messages from the earth itself. Whatever the source, the world beneath the darkness became a teacher that spoke through intuition rather than words. The tribe respected this world because they understood its purpose. The forces moving through the solstice night were not chaotic. They were guides that surfaced only when stillness allowed them to be perceived. The darkness carried lessons about boundaries, cycles, and the need for introspection. It reminded people that not all wisdom comes from clarity. Some truths require shadow to be understood. The night revealed what needed healing and what needed release. It illuminated the quiet corners of the heart, showing where strength remained untapped and where wounds still lingered. In the world beneath the darkness, time felt different. Hours stretched like open pathways. Moments deepened until they became experiences rather than measurements. People sitting by the fire sank into states of awareness that blended memory, intuition, and imagination. They entered a mental landscape shaped by darkness but illuminated by inner flame. This was the space where insights formed without effort, where old burdens loosened their grip, where the self reorganized around new understanding. Darkness provided the conditions for transformation because it removed the distractions that prevented inner truth from emerging. The ancestors did not fear this world because they understood its necessity. The darkness held the same function as the soil that embraces a seed. It cloaked potential, nurtured silence, and provided refuge for inner growth. Without darkness, nothing could germinate. Without stillness, nothing could transform. Without shadow, nothing could be seen in full depth. The world beneath the darkness was not the absence of light. It was the source of future light, a realm of becoming rather than decline. Modern life rarely enters this world with intention. Artificial light pushes darkness away, numbing our sensitivity to its teachings, but the solstice invites a return. It asks us to feel what lies beneath the surface of our own lives. It asks us to listen to the intuitions we dismiss. It asks us to recognize the spiritual intelligence woven into the natural world. When we sit in true darkness, we begin to sense the world the ancestors once walked through with reverence. The world beneath the darkness exists, whether we acknowledge it or not. It is the realm where inner truth waits to be felt, where instinct sharpens, where wisdom gathers quietly. The longest night opens this realm, offering access to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place within the cycles that shape life. To step into this world is to remember that darkness is not the opposite of light. It is its companion, its teacher, its origin. The ancestors honored the longest night because they understood that the world beneath the darkness is where transformation begins. And in remembering this, we step into the same ancient wisdom, allowing the night to show us what the day cannot. Fire did far more than warm the bodies of our ancestors. It revealed the inner landscape of their spirit. On the longest night, when the world slipped into profound darkness, the fire became the central force around which life gathered. It was the heart of the solstice, a pulse of light surrounded by a world that had withdrawn into silence. And at the center of that fire's tending were the women who understood its language. These women were the keepers of the night fire, guardians of the flame, and interpreters of its ancient wisdom. To the ancestors, fire was not an object. It was a presence. It responded to human touch, to breath, to emotion. It rose with intention and softened with quiet reverence. The keepers of the night fire knew how to listen to these responses. They understood the shifting colors of the flame, the timing of crackles, the behavior of embers. They recognized that the fire was a living intelligence that reflected the energy of the community. The tending of the flame was not mechanical. It was devotional, a sacred act that bridged the physical and spiritual worlds. The fire symbolized more than warmth. It symbolized continuity. In the longest night, when the sun itself appeared to falter, the flame became the tribe's reminder that light still lived. The keepers nurtured it with intention, feeding it with chosen for its spiritual resonance, oak for steadfastness, birch for new beginnings, ash for connection to the unseen. Each log placed into the fire carried meaning, and each tending of the flame reaffirmed the community's trust in renewal. The women who tended the fire became midwives of light, ensuring that the flame remained steady through the night's deepening shadows. Around this fire, stories were told, but they were not mere entertainment. They were rituals of survival, both emotional and spiritual. The keepers of the night fire guided these gatherings, sensing when the circle needed reflection, when it needed silence, when it needed warmth of laughter, and when it needed the stern clarity of truth. They understood that fire drew honesty from the soul. Its glow illuminated not only faces but unspoken emotions. In the flicker of the flame, old fears surfaced, long-held grief softened, and forgotten hopes began to stir. The keepers created space for these revelations, holding the circle in steady presence. Their relationship with the flame reflected an ancient understanding of the feminine principle. Fire is often associated with fierce energy, yet its survival depends on gentleness. Too much fuel smothers it, too much wind destabilizes it, neglect extinguishes it. The feminine wisdom recognized this balance instinctively. The keepers tended the flame with patience, intuition, and sensitivity to nuance. In doing so, they embodied the deeper lesson of the solstice. Light does not grow through force, it grows through care, attention, and alignment with natural rhythms. On the longest night, the fire also served as a boundary between worlds. Its glow marked the safe circle where the living gathered, while the darkness beyond held ancestral spirits, elemental forces, and the quiet intelligence of winter. The keepers of the night fire stood at this threshold. They mediated between the warmth of the known and the mysteries of the unseen. Their role was not to banish the darkness, but to honor it while keeping the community grounded. They understood that darkness carried wisdom, but fire provided the clarity needed to navigate it. For the tribe, the keepers symbolized resilience. They remained awake while others drifted into uneasy sleep, ensuring the flame did not falter during the longest hours. Their vigilance represented the community's collective will to endure. Their strength came not from aggression, but from devotion. They tended the fire with the same care that one gives to a fragile new life. Through their hands, the flame became a constant reminder that even in the deepest night, something still burns with purpose. Modern seekers often overlook the importance of this tending. Fire is romanticized, but its spiritual significance is forgotten. To reclaim the wisdom of the solstice, we must remember that the fire represents the inner flame within each person. It requires tending, it requires stillness, it requires commitment. Just as the keepers guarded the fire with intention, we are asked to tend our inner light through seasons of darkness. The fire teaches that even when energy wanes, even when clarity dims, the flame remains if cared for with intention. To sit before a fire on the longest night is to enter an ancient conversation. The flame asks, what must be released to rise again? What must be acknowledged that has been ignored? What part of your spirit needs warmth, and what part needs to be burned away? The keepers understood these questions not as burdens, but as invitations to transformation. Through their tending, the fire became a guide, illuminating the path through the darkness, showing each person who they were beneath their fears and beyond their limitations. The night fire remains a symbol of this ancient truth. Tend the flame with care. Listen to its whispers. Let it reveal the parts of you that need light and the parts that need release. The keepers remind us that fire survives when relationship is honored. And in that relationship, the soul finds its way through the longest night. Winter has a way of reshaping the world without announcing its intentions. It moves quietly, softening the edges of the land and slowing the rhythm of life until everything seems to breathe in a slower, deeper cadence. To the ancestors, this shift was not merely seasonal. It was instructional. Winter became a teacher whose lessons unfolded not through sound, but through silence. In that silence, the world revealed truths that were invisible during the bright and busy seasons of growth. The winter solstice, standing at the heart of the cold, was the moment when these teachings emerged with greatest clarity. Silence was not emptiness, it was presence. It held weight, depth, and meaning. When winter settled across the earth, people listened differently. Without the hum of insects, the chatter of animals, or the rustle of leaves, the land spoke in subtler tones. The crunch of snow became a reminder of fragility. The stillness of trees revealed the strength of roots hidden beneath frozen soil. The distant howl of wind carried stories from beyond the horizon. Winter taught that what is unseen often holds the most power, and that listening requires a willingness to become still. The ancestors recognized that this stillness was not simply external, it mirrored an internal state that winter invited. Their lives slowed because the earth slowed. Their tasks simplified because nature simplified. In that slowing, the mind opened to insights overlooked during seasons of movement. The silence created a space where buried thoughts rose to awareness. Old decisions were examined with new clarity. Long ignored emotions surfaced without resistance. The cold season became a time to reflect on the year that had passed, honoring what had blossomed and acknowledging what had withered. Women understood these teachings through their intuitive relationship with cycles. They recognized that every phase of nature contains wisdom, and winter's wisdom is introspection. They taught the tribe that silence is necessary for transformation. Just as seeds rest in darkness before they sprout, the spirit rests in stillness before it awakens. Winter's silence was not a void to be feared, but a sanctuary where renewal. The feminine perspective reframed the cold and the darkness not as obstacles, but as the sacred pause that prepares life for its next expression. One of winter's most powerful teachings was the value of restraint. The earth conserved its energy, withholding growth in order to survive. Animals rationed their stores or entered periods of rest. Even the sun drew close to the horizon, offering only brief moments of warmth. Through these patterns, the ancestors learned that constant output was unsustainable. To expend energy without pause was to exhaust oneself. Winter revealed the wisdom of stopping, the necessity of holding back, the importance of letting the world and the body recover. This was not laziness. It was alignment with natural law. Another teaching emerged from winter's uncompromising honesty. Cold reveals what is weak. It strips away what cannot endure. It exposes structures that lack foundation and habits that lack integrity. The ancestors understood this not as cruelty, but as clarity. Winter separated the essential from the unnecessary. It forced a recognition of what truly mattered. Food, shelter, community, warmth, ease were the pillars of life. Everything else could be released. The solstice became a moment to surrender distractions and return to the core truths that kept a community alive. In the silence of winter nights, people also encountered their fears with unusual intimacy. Darkness pressed close, offering no illusions. Yet this confrontation was part of winter's wisdom. Fear loses its power when faced directly. In the stillness, people recognized what their minds had exaggerated. They learned to sit with discomfort without being consumed by it. They discovered that fear often points towards something that requires attention and healing. Winter taught that strength is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to meet it with honesty and breath. The fire, glowing against winter's cold, became a symbol of these inner lessons. It reminded the tribe that stillness does not erase life. It concentrates it. The flame stood small against the vast night, yet it radiated warmth, clarity, and purpose. Winter taught that one light, held with intention, can illuminate the darkest landscape. In the same way, one moment of insight, one decision to rest, one breath of clarity could reshape an entire inner world. The solstice emphasized this truth by placing the flame at the center of the longest night, a reminder that even in stillness, power persists. Modern life often resists winter's teachings. People push through exhaustion, avoid silence, and interpret rest as weakness. Yet the wisdom of the season remains unchanged. Without stillness, there is no renewal. Winter teaches that pausing is not a break from life, but part of its rhythm. It invites a return to inner alignment, to values that nourish the soul rather than drain it. When we honor this invitation, the world feels less overwhelming. We begin to move with the earth instead of against it. In the teachings of winter, we rediscover the truth that endurance is not achieved through constant action. It is achieved through balance, through allowing the inner world to settle, through listening to the subtle messages that rise when the outer noise fades. Winter shows that every descent holds the seed of ascent. Every silence carries the promise of sound. Every still moment prepares the path for movement. This is the essence of solstice wisdom. Growth begins in the quiet, on the longest night, when the veil between worlds thins to its most delicate shimmer. Ancient peoples believed the unseen stepped closer, not as threats, but as guides, not as shadows meant to frighten, but as presences meant to remind humanity that life extends far beyond what the eyes can perceive. The solstice was the moment when the worlds touched. The living gathered around the fire, and just beyond that glow, the spirits of ancestors, nature beings, and seasonal forces moved in patterns older than memory. To the ancestors, the solstice night was alive. The darkness was not empty. It carried movement, intent, and a subtle intelligence that revealed itself only to those willing to feel rather than look. The spirits who walked between worlds were not imagined as distant figures. They were woven into the land itself. The breath of wind, the cracking of ice, the distant call of a night bird all were recognized as signs that the unseen was near. Each sound carried meaning. Each shift in the atmosphere hinted at a presence passing through. Ancestors were believed to be closest during this time. The long night invited them home, guiding their spirits back toward the warmth of the fire where their descendants continued the lineage they helped create. People sensed them not with sight, but with the soft awareness that arises in stillness. A familiar scent, a sudden warmth, a shift in emotion. These experiences were understood not as imagination, but as communion. The living and the dead shared the same world for those few hours, bound by memory, devotion, and the timeless cycle of the turning year. Nature spirits were also believed to roam freely during the solstice. Beings of forest, river, mountain, and sky moved across the land with a purpose known only to them. They were not tied to human concerns, yet their presence carried influence. The ancestors understood that these spirits shaped the health of the land, the rhythms of winter, and the balance between cold and returning sun. Respecting these beings was essential. Offerings of bread, herbs, or evergreen branches were placed at the edge of the darkness as gestures of gratitude. The fire's glow marked a boundary that honored their movement without disturbing it. Women, especially those skilled in intuition and dream work, sensed these presences most vividly. They recognized that the solstice opened pathways of perception usually closed by daily life. Their inner vision sharpened, allowing them to feel the subtle currents flowing through the night. These women became interpreters of signs, reading shifts in the flame or sensations in the air as messages from the spirits who walked between worlds. Their guidance helped the tribe understand the symbolic language of the night, ensuring that the solstice was not only observed but participated in with awareness. The spirits of winter itself played a distinct role during the solstice. These were not human ancestors or nature beings, but embodiments of the season's essence: the cold, the silence, the stillness, the clarity. These forces were perceived as ancient entities who carried the wisdom of winter. They moved without form, shaping dreams and emotions. People sensed them as a profound quiet settling into their bones, as a clarity of mind, or as a sudden awareness of what must be released before the new cycle begins. The spirits of winter were teachers who showed the tribe how to endure darkness with dignity and purpose. The ancestors believed that fear diminished the ability to perceive these beings. Only a calm, grounded mind could sense the presence of spirits without distortion. This is why the solstice rituals emphasized stillness, firelight, and reflection. These practices anchored the mind so that encounters with the unseen became bridges to wisdom rather than sources of anxiety. Spirits were not feared. They were respected. The solstice was not a battlefield between worlds, but a meeting, space where guidance could pass through the veil unhindered. Dreams during the solstice were considered especially potent. The spirits often communicated through symbolic images, offering insight into the coming year. A vision of a rising sun signaled renewal. A dream of frozen water indicated emotional stagnation ready to thaw. A visit from an ancestor revealed unresolved matters or blessings soon to manifest. The tribe understood that the line between dreaming and waking blurred during the solstice. Both realms carried guidance, and both were essential for navigating the year ahead. The fire remained the center of this communion. It created a circle of light that defined the realm of the living, while the darkness around it held the world of spirits. The flame's behavior became a language that the keepers of the night fire could read. A sudden flare might indicate a benevolent presence. A steady burn suggested alignment between worlds. A flickering flame hinted at unresolved tensions or emotions rising to the surface. Through this dance of fire and shadow, the community felt the presence of forces that shaped their lives in ways beyond human control. Modern seekers often sense these presences even without the ancient framework. A deep feeling that someone unseen is near. A moment of clarity that arrives without explanation. A dream that lingers with unusual weight. These experiences are remnants of the same perception the ancestors once lived fully. The difference is not the presence of spirits, but the willingness to acknowledge them. The solstice teaches that the unseen is not separated from the living world. It moves alongside it, offering guidance to those who listen. To walk through the longest night with awareness is to remember that your life is part of a larger tapestry woven by ancestors, nature, spirit, and the turning earth. The spirits who walk between worlds remind you that you are never alone in your journey. The veil thins not to frighten, but to reconnect. The solstice invites you to honor these presences, to sense their wisdom, and to allow their guidance to shape your path as the light begins its slow return. The ancestors understood a truth that modern life often forgets. Every journey into light begins with a deliberate step into darkness. The winter solstice was not only an astronomical threshold, but a spiritual descent to movement inward, downward, and deeper than the surface of daily existence. This descent was not accidental. It was intentional. It was the ritual that shaped the soul for renewal. In the longest night, people confronted the parts of themselves that remained hidden during the brighter seasons. They entered this ritual willingly, knowing that transformation demands honesty, courage, and surrender. The ritual of descent began long before the sun reached its lowest point. People felt the inward pull as winter approached. Harvests ended. The land grew quiet. Days shortened. The body responded with a need to rest. The mind softened its outward focus. Something deep within stirred, urging reflection. The ancestors recognized these instincts as invitations to prepare. Descent is never abrupt. It begins with subtle, slower movements, quieter thoughts, a growing awareness of unfinished emotions. These changes signaled that the season of introspection was drawing near. When the longest night arrived, the descent deepened. It was not a descent into fear. Though fears sometimes surfaced, it was a descent into truth. Firelight revealed only what stood directly before the eyes, forcing people to rely on inner vision for everything else. The darkness became a vessel that held their secrets, sorrows, and forgotten desires. Sitting around the solstice fire, individuals felt their inner landscape expanding. They sensed memories rising like embers. They felt old wounds loosening their hold. They encountered the parts of themselves carried silently throughout the year. Women recognized the pattern of descent intimately because their lives mirrored its rhythm. They knew that every cycle requires a phase of contraction, a turning inward to gather strength. They taught the community that descent is not collapse. It is the sacred movement that makes renewal possible. In their guidance, descent became a ritual of returning to the self stripped of performance, stripped of expectation, stripped of everything except truth. Through their presence, the solstice descent became an initiation rather than a struggle. The ritual unfolded through stillness. When voices quieted, when the surrounding world sank into silence, people could hear the deeper currents within themselves. Thoughts that had been drowned out by busyness emerged clearly. Regrets appeared with sharp edges. Hopes whispered softly. Grief surfaced with dignity. The darkness allowed these truths to be felt without judgment. It held them gently, as the earth holds seeds waiting for spring. In the silence of the descent, people rediscovered honesty. They recognized where they had betrayed themselves, where they had abandoned their purpose, and where they longed to begin again. Descent also meant facing shadows, those aspects of self that had been ignored or denied. These shadows were not demons. They were wounded parts waiting to be acknowledged, fear that had been avoided, anger that had been swallowed, desire that had been repressed. The solstice night illuminated these shadows, not with bright light, but with the compassion of fire's glow. The ancestors knew that shadows lose their power when met with presence. In the descent, people learned to sit with discomfort without running from it. They discovered that beneath every shadow lies truth, and beneath truth lies liberation. The ritual of descent was a communal experience as much as an individual one. Each person's internal journey strengthened the collective. When someone faced their fear, the circle felt it. When someone released old grief, the fire crackled in response. When someone discovered an inner light they had forgotten, others found courage in that discovery. The solstice taught that descent is not isolation. It is shared humanity. It reveals that everyone carries burdens, everyone hides wounds, everyone holds potential waiting to be awakened. One of the most profound aspects of this ritual was its alignment with nature's cycle. The earth itself descended into stillness. The sun descended toward the horizon. Animals descended into dens or burrows. Life withdrew not to die, but to conserve energy for the coming rise. The ancestors mirrored this pattern. They descended inward to gather strength for the year ahead. They trusted that descent was not an ending but a preparation. The longer the night, the greater the potential for awakening at dawn. Modern seekers often resist descent because it requires slowing down, confronting emotion, and embracing vulnerability. Yet the solstice reveals that descent is the foundation of transformation. Without it, renewal becomes superficial. Without it, growth lacks roots. Without it, the inner flame flickers rather than burns steadily. The ritual of descent teaches that entering darkness consciously grants the power to rise consciously. It clarifies intention. It cleanses the heart. It restores alignment with one's deeper purpose. To practice descent today is to allow yourself to feel what you have avoided. It is to sit in silence long enough for truth to surface. It is to trust that darkness is not a punishment but a process. A descent into the self reconnects you with your instinct, your intuition, and your inner authority. It teaches you where you need to soften, where you need to strengthen, and where you need to let go. The ancestors descended into the longest night, knowing that the return of the sun depended on moving through the darkness rather than resisting it. In honoring this ritual, they affirmed their connection to the earth's cycles and to the wisdom carried within their own bodies. The solstice teaches that descent is not falling. It is arriving more deeply into who you are, and from that depth, the path toward light becomes clear. The ancestors believed that every person carried a sacred flame inside them, not a literal fire, but an inner light that mirrored the sun's own strength and endurance and ability to rise again after every descent. This hidden flame was the core of the self, the pulse of intuition, the spark of purpose that no darkness could extinguish. On the longest night, when the world seemed swallowed by shadow, the ancestors turned their attention inward to find this flame and to understand what it revealed. The solstice was not only a cosmic event, it was a reminder that each soul possesses a radiant center capable of guiding its own renewal. The hidden flame was easiest to perceive when the outer world fell quiet. During the brighter seasons, distractions scattered attention outward, but winter gathered awareness inward toward the heart of one's being. As people sat before the solstice fire, they felt a resonance between the flame outside and the flame within. The two lights spoke to each other. The external fire illuminated faces. The internal flame illuminated truth. The ancestors believed this was the moment when the soul's light became most accessible, because darkness stripped away everything that concealed it. To recognize the hidden flame required stillness. The mind needed to soften its grip on thought. The body needed to release the tension accumulated through the year. The heart needed space to feel without interruption. As the longest night deepened, a person could sense a warmth rising from within, not physical, but emotional and spiritual. It came as clarity where confusion had been. It came as calm in the presence of old fear. It came as a knowing that emerged without effort. The hidden flame was the part of the self that remained steady even when life became difficult. Women often served as guides in this inner work because they understood the language of subtle shifts. They recognized that the hidden flame reveals itself not through force, but through attention. They encouraged the community to listen to their inner voices, to honor instincts, and to trust the sensations that rose naturally in silence. To them, the hidden flame represented intuition, the deep feminine power that whispers rather than shouts, that guides through feeling rather than command. They knew that when a person learns to hear this inner guidance, the path through darkness becomes illuminated from within. The hidden flame was also understood as the source of personal resilience. It held the strength that remained untouched by hardship, loss, or uncertainty. Even when outer circumstances grew heavy, this flame continued to burn quietly. The ancestors taught that the purpose of the solstice was to reconnect with this source of power. When the sun appeared weakest in the sky, the inner flame revealed its true strength. Darkness could not extinguish it. Silence could not smother it. Even grief could not diminish it entirely. The solstice reminded people that their deepest strength does not come from the world around them, but from the light they carry inside. This flame also illuminated the desires and dreams that had been buried by routine or fear. In the stillness of the solstice night, people often felt long-suppressed hopes rise to the surface. Some sensed a longing for change. Others recognized the need for healing. Others discovered a passion that had been neglected for too long. The hidden flame revealed not only strength but direction. It clarified what the soul wished to create, to release, or to pursue in the coming cycle. This was not a moment of planning or strategy. It was a moment of truth. A moment when the inner flame spoke with honesty about what mattered most. The ritual of descent, described by the ancestors, prepared the way for this revelation. By confronting shadows and releasing old burdens, individuals cleared the space around their inner flame. Only then could its light shine without distortion. The solstice night became a sacred mirror that reflected the soul back to itself. People saw who they were beneath fear. They saw what remained after letting go. They saw the core that endured every challenge. The hidden flame did not need to be created. It needed to be uncovered. Modern life often dims this inner flame, not because it weakens, but because attention is scattered. The noise of responsibilities, the pressure to perform, and the constant pull of external stimulation bury the quiet voice of intuition. Yet the flame remains. It waits for the moment when silence returns. It waits for the breath that slows. It waits for the recognition that the self is more than its struggles. The solstice teaches that inner light cannot be lost. It can only be forgotten. And forgetting is reversible through awareness. To reconnect with the hidden flame today is to turn inward with honesty. It is to sit with your own presence long enough to feel the warmth that rises naturally when you stop running from yourself. It is to acknowledge your resilience, your loans, and your capacity for renewal. The hidden flame is not mystical in the sense of distance. It is mystical in the sense of depth. It is the place within you that remains untouched by the world's chaos. It is the part that knows your path even when your mind doubts it. The ancestors honored this flame because they understood its significance. It guided them through winters, through hardships, through uncertainty. It was the thread connecting them to their purpose. The solstice night invited them to strengthen this connection, to carry the flame forward as the year turned toward light. For them, recognizing the hidden flame was essential to survival not only physically, but spiritually. The hidden flame lives within you as well. It is the quiet, steady glow beneath your fears. It is the soft warmth beneath your doubts. It is the light that has carried you through every winter of your life. When you turn inward with intention, when you listen without resistance, when you honor your own depth, this flame reveals itself. And once you see it clearly, the path ahead becomes illuminated from within. There is a moment after the longest night when the darkness begins to loosen its grip. It happens quietly, without fanfare, before the world is fully aware of what is changing. The horizon softens, the air shifts, the sky hints at a color it has not shown in many hours. This fragile moment, when night is not yet ended and day has not yet begun, was regarded by the ancestors as the threshold of rebirth. It was the breath between worlds. It was the first promise that the sun was returning, not in triumph, but in gentle assurance. Rebirth does not arrive with force. It begins as a whisper at the edge of dawn to the ancient peoples. This moment held immense significance. They had walked through the descent, honored the darkness, sat with their truths, and tended the flame. They had faced their shadows and uncovered their hidden inner light. Now, as the sky brightened slightly, they recognized that something within them was rising with the sun. The outer dawn mirrored their inner shift. The longest night had changed them. They emerged from it with clearer awareness, renewed strength, and a deeper connection to their own spirit. Rebirth was not an event. It was a process that began in darkness and revealed itself in light. The first rays of dawn carried symbolic meaning. They represented clarity after confusion, direction after uncertainty, and possibility after introspection. The ancestors believed that the dawn after the winter solstice awakened the world's memory of life. It reminded the land that warmth would return. It reminded the rivers that movement would resume. It reminded the trees that sap would rise again. In the same way, the dawn reminded each person of their capacity to grow, to begin again, and to embody the truths discovered during the long night. Women viewed this moment through a deeply intuitive lens. They saw the dawn as a gentle birth, not a sudden explosion of light, but a gradual emergence shaped by care and intention. They understood that when something new is born, it must first be protected. The returning light did not demand celebration. It called for tenderness. It asked the tribe to move slowly, to honor the transition, and to allow the new cycle to take form naturally. Through their guidance, the dawn became a sacred moment of reverence. It was not merely the rising of the sun, it was the rising of every soul that had entered the night seeking truth. As the dawn strengthened, people felt a shift in their bodies. The cold seemed less sharp. The air held a subtle warmth beneath the frost. Their thoughts felt brighter, their emotions more balanced. The fire that had burned through the night now reflected the growing light outside. The tribe recognized that the flame they had tended symbolized their inner transformation. Now, The returning sun took up that role. It carried their intentions into the new cycle. It illuminated their path forward. The external world resumed its rhythm, and the internal world prepared to follow. Rebirth did not erase what happened in darkness. Instead, it integrated it. The ancestors understood that every insight, every release, every recognition shaped the self that stepped into the dawn. The longest night had stripped away illusions. The edge of dawn rebuilt identity on a foundation of truth. People felt lighter because they were no longer carrying burdens that did not belong to them. They felt stronger because they had faced themselves without turning away. They felt more aligned because the darkness had cleared the path for clarity. This moment was also deeply communal. As the sun rose, the tribe gathered to witness it together. Their collective breath seemed to synchronize with the slow brightening of the sky. They shared the renewed sense of purpose that dawn awakened. They recognized that although each person had traveled through their own inner night, the community rose together. The solstice had bound them with shared experience, shared courage, and shared renewal. The dawn became a symbol of unity as much as individuality. The ancestors used this moment to set intentions for the new cycle. These were not resolutions shaped by pressure or ambition. They were commitments formed from inner knowing. They asked themselves what they wished to nurture, what they wished to grow, and how they wished to live in alignment with the truths they had uncovered. The returning sun served as witness to these intentions. It carried them into the coming seasons, illuminating the path with consistency and purpose. Rebirth at the edge of dawn teaches that transformation does not require dramatic shifts. It requires honesty, presence, and patience. The soul does not leap from darkness into brilliance. It moves through shades of light until it finds its way. The dawn reminds us that the smallest glow can become a guiding force. It shows that life returns gently, that renewal unfolds gradually, and that the most profound changes are often the quietest. Modern seekers often expect transformation to feel immediate and unmistakable. Yet the solstice dawn reveals the true nature of renewal. It is subtle, it is steady. It emerges from the work done in silence rather than from external validation. When you feel a shift in your inner landscape, a softening, a warming, a quiet clarity, you are witnessing your own dawn. You are stepping out of the longest night with a flame that refuses to fade. The solstice teaches that rebirth is not a reward. It is the natural consequence of entering darkness with courage. It is the inevitable rise that follows descent. It is the gentle return of strength, purpose, and light. As the dawn breaks, the world remembers how to grow. And as you step into your own dawn, you remember how to live from a place of truth. When the sun begins its slow climb after the longest night, something stirs not only in the sky but in the earth itself. The ancestors felt this awakening not through logic, but through instinct. They sensed the shift in the soil long before the snow melted. They understood that even in winter, the earth was not dead. It was gathering, resting, dreaming. The solstice marked the moment when that dream subtly changed direction. The earth, though still cold, began preparing for renewal, and the people followed its lead, returning their awareness to the living world that sustained every breath of their existence. To the ancient mind, humans were not separate from the earth. They were an extension of it. Their emotions reflected the seasons. Their energy followed the cycles of light and darkness. Their inner world mirrored the land's own transformations. The solstice reaffirmed this connection. After the inward descent and the intimate work of the longest night, the tribe stepped back into relationship with the physical world. They recognized that their personal rebirth was inseparable from the earth's rebirth. The return of the sun was not just an astronomical event, it was a reminder of belonging. The earth in winter speaks in quiet tones, and the ancestors knew how to listen. They felt meaning in the crunch of frost beneath their feet. They saw potential in the bare branches holding space for the coming buds. They read the wind not as a force, but as a message. Winter's landscape taught them that stillness does not equal emptiness. The land conserved energy, focused inward, and survived through balance. This became a model for human life: to rest when needed, to gather strength during times of depletion, and to trust in the natural rhythm that guides all living things. Women in the tribe were often the interpreters of this relationship with the earth. They felt the subtle aliveness beneath frozen ground. They understood that winter held the same energy as the womb dark. Protective, full of potential, they taught others to walk gently across the land, sensing what lay beneath the surface. They recognized that nature's silence was never absence. It was deep presence. Through their perception, the tribe learned that returning to the earth after the solstice meant returning with humility, awareness, and gratitude for the land that held them through the darkness. The fire had sustained the people through the longest night, but it was the earth that would sustain them through the coming year. The ancestors offered thanks to the ground that fed them, the animals that shared the land with them, and the cycles that governed their survival. They understood that without connection to the earth, spiritual insight meant little. The solstice was sacred not only because it brought light, but because it reawakened the relationship between humanity and the living world. They saw themselves as part of an ecological rhythm that echoed the rhythm of their own hearts. Returning to the earth also meant recognizing the lessons embedded in the land's winter teaches resilience through surrender. Trees survive by letting go of leaves. Animals survive by conserving energy. The earth survives by slowing its pulse without abandoning its essence. The ancestors learned that they, too, must release what weighed them down. They, too, must rest when necessary. They, too, must trust that even during their darkest seasons, life continues beneath the surface, preparing to rise again. As they stepped into the days following the solstice, people walked with heightened awareness. The world looked the same, but they did not. They noticed the shape of shadows cast by the returning sun. They felt the slight warmth that mingled with the cold air. They saw patterns in the landscape that had been invisible before their descent. Their inner light allowed them to perceive the outer world with new clarity. Returning to the earth was not a physical act alone. It was spiritual integration, bringing the insights of the longest night back into everyday life. This return also restored a sense of responsibility. In the ancient worldview, the earth gave generously, and humans were expected to give care in return. The solstice reminded the tribe of this mutual relationship. They tended the land, protected its resources, and honored its cycles. They understood that their survival was intertwined with the health of the world around them. Returning to the earth meant returning to a life of reciprocity rather than extraction. It meant recognizing the sacredness in every stone, every tree, every breath of wind. Modern life often severs this relationship. Concrete, screens, and artificial light create the illusion that humans exist apart from nature. Yet the body remembers. The psyche remembers. The spirit remembers. The solstice invites a reconnection to the land, the real land beneath our feet, not the conceptual one we imagine from afar. It urges us to step outside, to breathe air shaped by seasons, to touch bark and soil, to listen to wind moving across the world. Returning to the earth is an experience of grounding, clarity, and truth. No matter how disconnected life becomes, the earth remains the foundation of every cycle we move through. It holds our grief, our growth, our rest, and our awakening. The solstice reminds us that the earth walks with us through every descent and celebrates with us in every rise. When we return to the living world with awareness, we step back into the ancient partnership that shaped human life for millennia. The solstice taught the ancestors to trust the land. It teaches us the same. When you return to the earth after your own long night, you rediscover a sense of belonging that is older than memory. you feel the pulse of the world beneath your feet. You sense the quiet promise of renewal. You recognize that the earth is not simply where you live. It is what you are connected to, what you emerge from, and what you ultimately return to. In coming back to the living earth, you come back to yourself. The winter solstice is often described as the return of the sun, but the ancestors knew that its deeper meaning lived within the people themselves. What mattered most was not the light rising in the sky, but the light awakened in the human spirit. After walking through darkness, tending the fire, listening to winter's silence, facing the shadowed places within, uncovering the hidden flame, and witnessing the first glow of dawn, each person emerged from the longest night carrying something new, something earned, something alive. This inner light was not a symbol. It was a presence shaped through descent, revelation, and renewal. The light carried forward from the solstice was never meant to remain within the circle of the fire. It was meant to illuminate the path ahead. It offered guidance through the unpredictability of life, grounding through hardship, and clarity in moments of confusion. The ancestors believed that this inner light strengthened each time it was honored, protected, and expressed. It became the anchor of the self, a steady brilliance that could not be dimmed by circumstances. This was the true gift of the solstice, the recognition that no external darkness can overpower a light consciously. As the tribe moved into the days following the solstice, they carried this inner light with purposeful awareness. The return of the sun did not erase the lessons learned in the long night. Instead, it gave those lessons form and direction. The ancestors understood that insight without action becomes dormant, so they allowed the inner flame to shape their choices, their relationships, and their daily rhythms. Some recognized the need for healing and began the work they had long postponed. Others felt called toward new beginnings, guided by the clarity that dawn had revealed. Every person carried the solstice light into the unfolding year, allowing it to become the quiet force that shaped their path. Women played a vital role in nurturing this continuity. They reminded the community that light is not maintained through grand gestures, but through consistent presence. They encouraged others to honor the flame within themselves with the same tenderness used in tending the night. Through their wisdom, the light became a companion rather than a fleeting inspiration. It guided not only the mind, but the heart. It helped individuals move through life with intention rather than abandonment. Through each cycle of the moon, through every shift of the season, the light reminded them of who they had become in the longest night. The solstice marked the turning point in the year, but it also marked a turning point in consciousness. The darkness had stripped away illusion. The fire had revealed truth. The dawn had spoken of possibility. Returning to the earth had grounded the self in something real and ancient. Now, carrying the light forward meant living in alignment with these revelations. It meant making decisions from clarity rather than fear. It meant honoring the cycles rather than resisting them. It meant recognizing that every descent holds the promise of rebirth, and every rebirth carries the responsibility of living with awareness. The ancestors saw the solstice as a contracting agreement between the individual and the world. The world provided the cycle. The individual provided the intention. The light within them was not separate from the light of the sun. It was a reflection of the same eternal rhythm. To carry the light forward was to participate in this rhythm consciously. It meant allowing personal transformation to echo the transformation of the natural world. It meant honoring life not as a straight path, but as a wheel turning endlessly through descent, stillness, and rising. Modern seekers continue this lineage each time they choose presence over distraction, truth over avoidance, stillness over noise. Carrying the light forward means remembering the wisdom of the darkest night even when the days grow long again. It means trusting the strength cultivated in silence. It means honoring the inner flame when life becomes overwhelming, knowing that its glow is older than doubt and steadier than fear. The solstice reveals that light is not something we create, it is something we uncover. And once uncovered, It remains a guide through every season that follows. When you carry the light forward, you carry a deeper understanding of yourself. You carry the resilience born from descent. You carry the clarity awakened in silence. You carry the courage discovered in shadow. You carry the softness learned from the earth's patience. You carry the wisdom revealed in the fire's glow. This light becomes part of your presence, shaping the way you move through the world. Others feel it even if they cannot name it. It steadies your steps. It warms your connections. It transforms your path into one that aligns with your spirit rather than your fears. The solstice teaches that light is not the opposite of darkness. It is born within it. The cycle of renewal begins in the depths and rises toward the sky because life itself moves this way. When you honor this cycle, you step into harmony with the rhythms that sustain existence. Carrying the light forward means living as someone who has walked through the longest night and emerged with the truth that cannot be forgotten. You become the keeper of your own flame. You become the reminder that even in the darkest moments, something within you remains steady. You become the embodiment of the wisdom that has guided humanity through thousands of winters. The light you carry forward is not small. It is the oldest fire in the world, burning through your spirit with purpose. And wherever you walk from this moment on, that light walks with you.